10 days on. For the last few days, I've been in my office processing various administrative details. Jesus has carried on with his new routine of visiting Galilean villages and urging the people to get themselves ready to meet his Father. The only difference from his previous tour has been the presence of the 4 fishermen, which has caused considerable amusement up here in the heavenly realm. Today, I need to speak with Jesus about his choice of friends. Earlier, the 5 new friends were just leaving Maroth when they heard a cheap bell clanking ahead of them around a bend in the road. Jesus was walking on his own, slightly ahead of the others, followed by Simon and Andrew. James and John were in the rear arguing. But they would have all heard that bell, even if they'd been singing at the tops of their voices. It was the bell of a man with leprosy, warning people of his advance. The 4 fishermen stopped on the track. Jesus continued. Simon shouted after Jesus urgently, "Teacher, stop! We'll climb onto this bank and wait till he's out of the way." "I'm going to have a chat with this man," Jesus replied. "Then I'll come and join you." He walked on. A man dressed in old sacking limped into view. His face was scarred and bleeding. One hand was engulfed in a crude bandage. At the sight, Simon turned pale and struggled not to be sick, but he stood his ground, as did the others behind him. "Come on," he instructed his companions. "We're going with Jesus." Simon walked stiffly, holding his breath. The others followed. When Jesus held out his hands to the disfigured man, the 4 companions watched, transfixed. All that they'd been taught from childhood about the terrible dangers of leprosy was being confounded by Jesus. They drew closer to hear him instructing the man to be sure to get a certificate of healing from the priests in Jerusalem. Finally, he looked at the man, who quite clearly was utterly cured and restored, and said, "Don't tell anyone how this happened." The man walked away, free of his limp, his head and hand uncovered. Simon joined Jesus, saying, "No chance of that." "No chance of what?" Jesus asked. "Of him not telling anyone." Later. Through this whole Jesus business, I've become quite accustomed to being totally ignored by humans. Occasionally one appears to be vaguely aware of my presence, but most of the time they behave as if I did not exist. Hence, I was caught out this afternoon when Jesus, having taken leave from her 4 fishermen, looked straight into my eyes and said, "Well, Oriel, what is it?" "Why do you bother healing them?" I asked. "They're going to die anyway." "Why do you think?" he replied, a characteristic question. "Well, you love them, obviously," I said, "but surely you haven't decided to turn back the great tide of human illness and disease." "Illness and disease aren't the real problem, as you know, Oriel," my master replied. "But I've come to put humanity right, and these healings are signs that point the way ahead." I considered his words. "Now, why have you come to see me?" he asked. "A message from your father," I explained. Jesus sat down and I continued. "He asked me to tell you that it is time you started picking some suitable men and women to take over from you when you, later on." "Oh, I've already made a start," Jesus informed me. "Oh, excellent. Who did you have in mind?" Jesus looked towards the fishermen who were entertaining themselves by plucking blades of grass in a pointless attempt to be the one with the longest blade. I laughed, assuming that Jesus was joking. He asked, "Which do you think should be the leader, Simon or John?" I was shocked. I had in mind someone more educated, I said. The truth is that the current theory in angeldom is that Jesus was keeping these 4 buffoons rather as some people keep pets for relaxation and general entertainment. There was no doubt that Jesus was utterly serious, but I was too taken aback to be able to answer his question. Your father suggests that you should select 12, I said, changing tack. Maybe we should take a trip to Jerusalem to check out the university. No need for that, he said confidently. I know exactly who to ask next. Why don't you join us tomorrow? He had a certain twinkle in his eye, which I recognised from of old. I'm quite sure that I am in for an even bigger shock. The following morning. I've just been chatting with Raphael and asked him if he had any ideas as to who Jesus is going to choose next. He echoed my suggestion about the university. When I put to him the Simon or John question, he replied, if those two men were the only humans left in the physical universe, I would choose Andrew. It's time for me to join up with Jesus and his little shoal of fishermen. Late afternoon. Jesus acknowledged my arrival and led us to the West Galilee tax office, outside of which stood a long queue of extremely grumpy people. They were all waiting to pay their monthly revenue contribution. Every one of them was complaining, saying how the cost of living was going up, but incomes were going down and taxes were getting steeper. To be honest, I could understand very little of their talk, but the general mood was unmissable. Matthew, the revenue officer, is universally despised. We stood in the queue for ages, surrounded by this little self-obsessed misery, until Jesus' turn finally came, and we entered the ornately furnished office of Matthew, the tax collector. The whole concept of money is utterly beyond me, but I'd assumed that Jesus was there to pay his own contribution before we moved on. I was as bewildered as Simon, Andrew, James, and John when Jesus simply said, Matthew, come and join me. Without a moment's hesitation, the thin-faced Jew wearing Roman clothes left his desk, his money, and his life's work, and followed the Son. Jesus, with a broad smile on his face, opened the door and ushered out 4 pale fishermen and a beaming-eyed tax collector. As I passed, I whispered in Jesus' ear, You've either gone completely mad, or this is a stroke of outrageous genius. When Jesus and I were alone, he replied, Neither. It's simply that Earth is a dangerous place and you can achieve nothing without taking some carefully considered risks. He walked out into the sunshine, leaving me to ponder this new dimension to our mission. I know we're taking risks and have already had some close calls, but the stakes have just been raised. As I was deep in thought, Jesus returned to the tax office and said, Oriel, I don't suppose you've ever experienced a human party? He was right. Meet me at Matthew's house tonight, he added casually. You might even enjoy yourself. I couldn't help feeling that the sun is getting a little too involved in human existence. A small cloud of jealousy drifted across my mind. I'd always thought of humans as pathetic, tragic figures, and it never entered my mind that it might be fun to be one. When I stepped out of the small office, I encountered an astounding scene. The queue was still there, and it was longer than ever. The grim misery had blown into raging fury. The very people who had been earlier moaning that they had to pay taxes were now furious that there was no one on hand to relieve them of their hard-earned income. I've been queuing here for over an hour and I'm not moving a step until someone comes to see me, one said. And another, it's not as if I hadn't 1,000 other things I could be doing. I will never understand humans,